I like very much what you were saying here in the book about these two types of compassion, difference between empathy and compassion. Would you mind going a little bit onto that, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. It has a lot to do with, I would say, my history in the world of people who study empathy and compassion. And what they were calling empathy is not what a scientist thinks of as empathy. Empathy is about a signal of someone being injured affecting the same parts of your nervous system as if you were being injured. Now, compassion, if you thought that empathy and compassion were the same, when someone's in pain and screaming, you're screaming also with that person. That's not being compassionate. So the compassionate person is one who literally holds his space, holds her physiological state, and witnesses and supports the others. The important part about this is not to demand of a person that they should give up their empathy. So it's not like saying, oh, you shouldn't feel that pain of the other person. The issue is you feel that pain because that is being triggered like it's a neuroception, it's a reflex. Respect the reflex and then let it dissipate and then be compassionate. So you react to the pain of the other and you say, wow, that's my nervous system. I'm human. This is what humans do. But I'm also a human that has a cortex with a lot of love and compassion, so I can reach out and be present for the other person. And over time, this is where compassionate people who are in war zones and other places, their neuroception to these, or I would say to the empathy of the others, is not as visceral. The body learns that it is the other person being injured there's a distance. They're not being injured. They may feel the other person, but it's not as disruptive. So for many people, when we see someone injured or like someone like with a compound fracture or we are going to feel so reactive to that we can't be present for them. We can't be supportive.
Right. So important. So important for all of us. I mean, in whatever role we are, as a parent or a
but
teacher or a
we
therapist.
need to separate and say humans are empathic, but empathy does not help the other person who's injured. So there's a pragmatic aspect. So we have to understand that we are reacting because we are human, but we are also humans with inhibitory systems, which means our cortex. So we are aware that we reacted and we have a degree of, let's use the term, agency where we can control it. We take our own breaths, we calm down. And often you might have experienced this in your life, is that the person near you, if you, let's say, hurt or fell, will get so dysregulated that they'll really literally get angry at you and be unable to be helpful because they're so dysregulated by what happened to you. And they have to, it's because they get this visceral reaction and that is driving it. Now, the compassionate person says, I know that I'll have a visceral reaction, but that's not how it's going. That's not going to drive my behavior. So it's a step one. I acknowledge it. Step two, I am literally processing it and I'm here for you.
Right. And at that point, it's so important then to have the toolkit to be able to convince the body to give up its defensive, adaptive ways, or blind empathy, and give it signs, direct signs of we can be safe enough at this moment so that we can help the other person to also experience safety.
Yeah, the other part is actually using our sense of who we are in space and time, in context. So if we are reacting to another person's injury, mental or physical, we have to also develop a degree. Number one, we're aware that we reacted, but we also have to be very aware that the injury is not to us, it's to the other person.
Right.
And that becomes literally that space in which we say, I have a role, I have a purpose. It's like being a therapist. So I've been really affected by all the disruptions around the world, what's gone on in Israel, what was going on in Ukraine, and how it is to be a therapist in those environments. And my discussions with them have been that they cannot do their work. They can't be a good therapist if their bodies are in states of fear and anger. So they have to realize that they're human. They're going to get angry. They're going to get scared. And they have to realize that when they're in that state, they can't do therapy because they're broadcasting that to other people. So they can't exhibit the compassion, they can't hold the space. The irony, or I would say the paradox, is that when people get into those states in those countries where all this conflict is, they feel that they have to do something, even though they're in that state. And they don't realize that this anxiety and desire to do something is also broadcasting a state of dysregulation to their clients. It's not an easy task, but it's one in which they have to acknowledge that their first role as a therapist is that their state has to be regulated